Good evening and welcome. It's Tuesday, March 24th, 2026. And you are watching Last Week Today. We're a compilation of the most important stories of the week from both legacy and new media outlets. My name's Chuck Black, and my partner in crime tonight, as always, is Richard Gagnon. Richard, how's it going?
Just going great here. Yeah.
You look massively relaxed. You've got your smoking jacket on. There's sunlight coming through the window, and it looks like your cat's in the distance, sleeping on the bed.
No, I thought he was over that way.
Maybe he's just a pillow. Maybe I get it wrong. Anyway.
Yeah, I think he's over that way.
Oh, okay. Anyway, how's it going out there?
Yeah, it's going great. Yeah, we got nice weather out here. We had rain today, a lot of rain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so tomorrow when I travel, hopefully it won't be too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because I got to leave here early in the morning. So
that's the difference between Northern Ontario and Northern BC. Spring in BC is always far better than spring in Ontario.
That's right. Yeah, the flowers I think are blooming in Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, that sounds like you're going to have a good day tomorrow when you travel.
It looks like it might be, yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's your weather report.
Just quickly check here what it's supposed to be. Yeah, it's supposed to be, the sun's supposed to be peeking through the clouds tomorrow morning.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see.
For tonight, maybe we should start on our stuff tonight. We got a lot of words to go through tonight. It's been a busy
okay. Let's give it a shot and see if we can get through them all.
Here we go. The top story tonight is a little bit off the beaten track, but I think it's important. It's the American National AI Legislative Framework, and I believe that it will overwhelm Canada because Canada is working on exactly the same sort of document from our perspective. Now, the U.S. has released its National AI Legislative Framework. And if you look closely, you'll find that I used AI, Grok, to give a graphic overview of what it's all about. But as outlined in the March 20th, 2026 White House press release on the topic under the title, President Donald Trump unveils National AI Legislative Framework. Now, the body of that press release is all about how the Trump administration has urged Congress to enact uniform federal legislation to win the AI race by trotting out all the usual innovation, economic competitiveness, and national security platitudes. And key elements of the proposal include parental controls and safety features, kind of like Bill C-63, to protect children from exploitation and self-harm, while also giving the government, Palantir in particular, an excuse to track everything anyone ever does in the expected, soon-to-be-constructed AI panopticon. Now, it also argues for streamlining permitting for AI data centers because they got to go up. You need lots and lots of them. Streamlined permitting for AI data centers to manage energy costs and grid reliability and to keep them from being constructed sometime this century rather than the 400 or 500 years it'll take to construct them if you go through all the regular permitting. They also are calling, the Trump administration is also calling for something called balanced intellectual property rules that support creators and fair use provisions such as trade secret laws, which keep most of the technical details of AI out of the hands of both China and the unwashed masses like Richard and I. The U.S. document also calls for strong protections against government censorship and for free speech, but it likely won't address indirect corporate censorship. The document also calls for removal of regulatory barriers to accelerate deployment, and workforce training to take advantage of this AI-ready economy that everybody's looking for. Now, the U.S. framework also emphasizes. Oh, your phone's ringing, Richard?
Nope, just emails coming in.
Oh, okay. Now, the U.S. framework also emphasizes federal preemption of conflicting state laws to prevent regulations that could restrict Washington's plans for U.S. leadership. It's kind of like what Carney called for in the budget, an idea to cut corners and bypass legislation that he found problematic. And to be fair, how does this affect Canada? How does U.S. legislation relating to AI affect Canada? Well, Ottawa is also finalizing something it calls its National AI Strategy. That's a policy paper expected to be released sometime later this year. And you'll also see that I used AI to summarize some of the points that Canadian government documentation seems to be prioritizing. And it seems like the Canadian policy is expected to prioritize ethics. I'm not sure what that means, but it will prioritize somebody's ethics. It also prioritizes something called data sovereignty, which essentially means the data's got to be stored in Canada. It also prioritizes responsible innovation. They call it responsible because it's likely going to be legislated up the wazoo to make sure that only the Canadian government controls what's going on. They're also going to emphasize public trust, likely through the use of more government legislation. And this seriously contrasts with the U.S. emphasis on minimal regulation and its preemption of anyone else's rules, even Canada's rules. After all, we're going to be the 51st state at some point. Now, Canada's analysts anticipate that because of the difference between the American and the Canadian legislation, a lot of Canadian talent will migrate southward fairly quickly because the U.S. pays better for knowledge workers, and domestic Canadian startups, first off, don't have the market. They won't be allowed into the U.S., and they risk being outpaced or acquired by better resourced American players. And at the same time, North American AI integration could strengthen supply chains and collaborative R&D, especially in energy-intensive data centers. So there is a bit of a push to make the U.S. and Canada cooperate, but not a lot. And Trump's always wanted to go his own way. He that's really obvious in how he deals with Iran. It's certainly obvious how he's dealing with AI centers. But any decision to close ranks with the Americans will essentially heighten concerns over AI sovereignty. It will heighten concerns over privacy. It will bias safeguards. The Americans like their safeguards, Canadians like their safeguards. And it will also almost demand reliance on U.S. tech giants. This is something Ottawa doesn't particularly want. Ottawa will likely accelerate something called targeted supports. They'll give money to all their friends. A lot of what's going to happen is will be based on something called the Pan-Canadian AI Strategy, investments in public sector AI governance programs. These are available online. We'll include links to them in our show notes. It will all be an attempt to preserve homegrown leadership while seeking bilateral alignment on standards and workforce issues. But I got to say this. I think the government is probably going to fail. The Canadian government will fail at this, just like it did with the, how do I put this delicately, the Avro Arrow and Canada's original lead in aerospace technology, or the Canada arm and Canada's 60s and 70s and 80s lead in robotics development, which eventually an American company bought all of the Canada Arms patents, and robotics is a big thing in Japan and in the United States now. There is also, well, 10 years ago, Canada led the world in artificial technology. And a lot of the people from Canada at the U of T, in McGill University, in Montreal, have already moved to the States to get the best deal for the latest job offers. So I don't know, Richard. It looks like you're so disgusted you've left your chair, but what do you think about this?
Now my generator had stopped, so I had to go figure out what was going on. I got it going again.
Oh dear, do you need to? We're doing this live for anybody in the audience who needs to know. But Richard, do you need to? Can we continue, or do you need to turn off?
I got it working.
What do you think about the U.S. government co-opting and commandeering Canada's traditional role in AI research?
Well, we're the 51st state, remember?
Maybe.
So really, it's competition is what it is. That's all it.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to try to do their own thing, and it looks like they're all on the same page. But the problem is, they're all violating the core rules of AI.
Which is?
You do the programming of the base AI has to do no harm to a man or a woman.
Fair enough. I would argue that there's some intentional baseline to that sort of thing. I would say AI should be open source. AI should be distributed so everybody can use it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be centralized. It shouldn't be the purview of governments only. But you know, that has to do with both the Americans and Canadians these days wanting to make their own private panopticon.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we're everybody, and of course, the criminal element is really involved heavily in the AI.
Yes, and they're the ones who are going to benefit from it.
Yeah.
If we're all forced to go online, who knows? I mean, I can't even tell now when the government's calling me up to demand that I pay the $100,000 in back taxes to the unnamed Bermuda bank account.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I ignore a lot of the phone calls that I get.
Mm-hmm.
I just, as soon as I look at them, if it says suspected spam, well, I block that number.
Yeah.
And if it's something I just don't know, then I block it.
I see one other problem with not just Canada and the US. I see a problem with the EU attempting to build its own internet and use its own AI data in its own way. Same thing with Russia doing the same thing. I see problems with the Great Firewall of China. In order for centralized systems of AI to function properly, they need to have the largest data supply as possible. And the Americans aren't going to get the EU data, and the EU isn't going to get the Russian data, and the Russians aren't going to get the Chinese data. And the promise of AI will go the way of the promise of industrialization in Soviet Russia in the 1930s.
Yeah, don't forget though, AI can break through all these walls that they're putting up.
Maybe, but if AI is fighting other AI.
I know, but I think it'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I also think that you gain a lot of privacy just by unplugging from the internet.
There's that too, yeah. What's interesting, just as a sidebar on this, we had some winter campers here for overnight, and they had brought 3 dogs out. And I asked them, I said, did you enable Wi-Fi calling before you came out? And they said, what's that? So they didn't know. And I'm trying to get everybody who comes out here to enable Wi-Fi calling before they leave home. Okay. Because you can't do it when you're on the road. So you have to be within a Wi-Fi and within a cell tower range, both of them at the same time, in
That's
order to
wild.
enable it. Now, what's interesting about it is that one of their dogs took off and left them,
Okay.
so they couldn't find it. But the dog had a collar on it with a phone number, and I says, yes, but your phone isn't enabled to Wi-Fi calling, so you won't be able to get a call until
So
you
you got
get
to
home.
drive to the nearest city to get the to find out where your dog is.
Maybe, yes, yes. And anyways, this is why I tell people, there's a lot of things that you may not want to do, but the Wi-Fi calling is extremely important, especially if you're going out into the bush.
I agree. It's important,
Yeah.
and it's a reminder of it's a reminder of the promise of the Internet of Things and the Internet of Bodies has a ways to go yet.
Yeah.
And maybe AI isn't all that it's cracked up to be.
Yeah. So, anyways, AI is one of the key things that's going on here, and of course, they won't be able to track you if you're not connected to the internet.
Yeah. I think that's important to remember as well. So if you're going out someplace secret, don't bring your cell phone.
That's right, and make sure you leave it at home because I think some cell phones have passive background powering.
Oh wow!
So they're still connected, but even though they're turned off.
Yeah, I believe that's quite possible. I heard that the technology is slightly more advanced in Macintoshes or in Apple products, but you can never tell.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, now that we've frightened everybody and had a little fun, shall we go on to our next piece?
Sure.
This piece was almost my first choice for the top spot tonight. It's all about the Arab-Israeli war with U.S. participation the war against Iran and how this conflict isn't going to end anytime soon. Now, the growing toll from the Iranian airstrikes since late February 2026, which were launched in response to the U.S.-Israel attack on Iran, have caused dozens of civilian deaths, maybe hundreds of civilian deaths, thousands of injuries all across Israel and throughout the Middle East. Local outlets like the March 23rd, 2026 Kurdistan Post story on Israel interceptors failed to stop Iranian missiles in rare breach of defenses are increasingly reporting lapses in Israeli air defenses and increasing casualties. Evidently, the word is getting out. The Iron Dome isn't totally solid. But everybody thinks this is kind of unexpected. After all, Israel's multi-layered air defense systems were designed to handle attacks from ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, rockets, and it's been tested over a period of 10, 15 years. Nobody expected Iran to be able to effectively break through the Iron Dome anytime soon. But there's some very good reasons why Iran can overwhelm Israel, especially at this point. I'm going to talk about costs. Costs are really asymmetrical. Intercepting low-cost drones, low-cost Iranian-built drones with high-end Israeli missiles, millions of dollars for each missile, intercepting a $4,000 drone. Now, this sort of thing creates long-term economic challenges to the Western defense systems. The Israel military, the American military is rich, but nobody's that rich. Also, the Iranians use some fairly substantial saturation tactics. Iran and its proxies use massive salvos of these cheap drones to overwhelm Israeli radar, create intense, prolonged engagements, and they've used this to drain stockpiles of Israeli interceptor missiles. So Iran's actually doing what it's supposed to do. The Iranian military has survived the loss of its top military and civilian leaders in the early U.S.-Israeli attacks. And it kept going. Nobody expected Iran to last more than 2 or 3 days. Now, key factors contributing to Iran's continued effectiveness include some pretty interesting things. Something called the Mosaic Defense Doctrine. This is an Iranian doctrine developed after the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq. And this strategy decentralizes authority by dividing Iran into over 30 independent operational zones. I think it's officially 33, but I'm not sure. Now, if central command in Tehran is eliminated, and it certainly has been, 1,000 generals have been killed, regional commanders have the authority to act independently. They have the authority to continue operations, and they have the ability to fire missiles without waiting for orders. So Iran is just essentially a distributed military environment with more than a little bit in common with Vietnam during the Vietnam War, North Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and the centralized powers of Israel, the centralized military of the United States is having trouble coping with this. Iran also possesses a deep bench of replacements. The Iranian military maintains what they call a layered system with predetermined chains of command for every senior commander. You not only know who's your second in command, but you know who's going to take over from your second in command if your second in command goes down, and this goes down 10 or 15 levels in your hierarchy. Now, despite the high-profile deaths of leaders, including the supreme leader on the first day of war, replacements have been appointed swiftly, and the state structure continues to remain operational. And that's because they have lots of replacements. They have 90 million people all wanting to go to war because the Americans attacked first. There's also decentralized operations. Rather than relying on a top-down chain of command, Iranian units operate under pre-planned wartime contingencies. This means you don't need anybody to give orders. It's a headless structure which allows local units to continue fighting, and at times it makes them more effective at launching unexpected decentralized attacks. There's also the obvious problem, ideological hardening. Iran was attacked first. They didn't collapse. Instead of collapsing, the regime has used the initial attacks to increase its internal cohesion by focusing on how bad the U.S. and Israel are. There's also a substantial underground infrastructure. Iran has an extensive network of underground missile storage and manufacturing sites, which seem to allow it to continue operations even after intense airstrikes using the largest American-made munitions or bunker-busting bombs. I don't know. Alex Jones said a couple months ago that they have rods of God, which can be fired from orbit and will land, in a secret bunker and blow up anything 2 or 3 miles down. But that does not seem to be something the Americans are using now. The underground infrastructure for Iran remains safe. Now, some commentators, this is the frightening part. There are some commentators who are mostly advocates of something called dispensationalism. This is a religious decree. They've begun to claim that the war will soon trigger the apocalypse. The war will soon trigger global nuclear Armageddon. The war will soon trigger the Antichrist, or even divine judgment on the scale described in apocalyptic literature. They've started to pray for a quick end to the war because it seems to be following the path of religious texts like the Bible, Revelation, things like that. That scares me because these guys want to go forever and ever. Some of those guys are Americans. And I would say that even traditional conservative voices have begun to believe that the war is not going to end anytime soon. Sorry for the diatribe, Richard. What do you think?
Yeah, well, that's very possible. It may not end. Well, remember, it's already 47 years old, this war.
Yes.
So, and
But it
that's
was a
official.
Cold War up until 14, 15 days ago, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was, but Trump had enough of the negotiating tactics of the Iran.
Mm-hmm.
He just basically said, enough of this nonsense. Let's blow him out of the water. There's no point. I mean, he'd do the same thing in business. If somebody's not negotiating honorably, and they're trying to just basically get things changed around, the rules changed around, then he would do that in business. He would just shut them down.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he did the same thing with a lot of the countries. He basically gave them the best offer at the top of the negotiations. And if they tried to change the negotiations, then he would just say, forget it. Now we're going to do it my way. And this is what you're going to get. And it's not as good as the first offer.
What do you think of the Marines on the USS Boxer and the USS Tripoli going
the
towards
Marines?
the Strait of Hormuz? Yeah, Hormuz.
Yeah, the Marines are under the president's control directly. Yeah. And they're a very, very powerful military group.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, when Trump gives them an order, they have to follow it. They don't have to go through the Pentagon.
No, I agree with that. What do you think the president is going to order them to do at some point?
Oh, he'll probably tell them just terminate anybody that's causing problems. Get onto Iranian soil and go and kill some of these people that are causing problems.
Maybe.
So,
I am concerned. What do you think about the attacks on things like desalinization plants and other infrastructure?
Well, you want to try and shut down your enemy. And
Yeah,
if your enemy's not going to talk the way or negotiate or do anything that is in favor of what you want your goals to achieve, then just basically squeeze them in even more.
I appreciate your comments. I don't have any answers for this. I don't know. I don't know where this is going, and it makes me deeply uncomfortable. Any more questions from you before?
I don't know where it's going either right now at this point in time. All I know is that there's a lot of things that people in the world are going to start getting really upset about.
Yeah.
Price of gas, price of diesel.
I'm already upset at the price of gas.
Well, you know what? I'm not noticing it that much.
Mm-hmm.
Because recently I've changed I'm now running propane. Propane is cheaper than gas. So
that is a reminder that we have options available to us. We are not restricted to the existing supply chain, which you and I both agree is going the way of the dodo anyway.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but unless of course they increase the price of propane, I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Yeah.
So,
no, I understand. There are always options.
Yep. Yeah.
Shall we go on to our next piece?
Sure.
Let me see if I can find it. There we go. This is a Canadian story. Our first one today, I think. Okay. In other news this week, the Supreme Court of Canada has opened 4 days of hearings on the constitutionality of Quebec's 2019 secularism law, known as Bill 21. That law bans public sector workers from wearing visible religious symbols or face coverings while performing their duty. Now, Quebec Premier François Legault, I hope that pronounced correctly, his coalition Avenir Quebec provincial government has framed the legislation as being needed to define Quebec's collective public identity, and the legislation argue that the state must appear at all times to be religiously neutral. So you can't wear kirpans. You can't wear a lot of stuff. You can't wear burqas, things like that. And to be fair, everyone knows the law is supported by a significant portion of Quebecers, and it reflects a desire to continue the separation of religious influence from public institutions. In Quebec, this began way back in the 1960s during the Quiet Revolution, and it's still ongoing. Now, back to the court. Lower courts have upheld most of Bill 21, but challengers argue it violates Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, especially the rights relating to religious freedom, equality, and expression. Now, this is the second time we've talked about a different piece of legislation, which may violate charter rights to religious freedoms, equality, and expression. We did this once 2 weeks ago for another piece. And Quebec doesn't care. They initially evoked the notwithstanding clause to shield the Quebec legislation from judicial review. But this hasn't gone over well with the courts or Ottawa. In particular, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has encouraged the federal government to intervene in the case to impose novel restrictions on the use of the notwithstanding clause. That's exactly what he wants. He wants the courts to impose restrictions on the use of the notwithstanding clause. At the very least, he wants to permit legislatures, national legislatures, parliament, to shield laws from judicial review for a renewable period of 5 years, which, that's a way of avoiding court challenges to a whole bunch of things. Now, according to the September 25th Macdonald-Laurier Institute post on the topic, Carney invites the Supreme Court to rewrite the Constitution at democracy's peril. Ottawa's argument that the Supreme Court should rewrite the Constitution would undo a key component of Canada's constitutional settlement and further subordinate parliamentary government to adventurous exercises of judicial powers. Now, like I said earlier, back on March 11th, we dealt with this under the topic of no religious exemptions for Canada hate speech laws. And that article noted that Carney had already done a deal with the provincially based Bloc Québécois in Quebec in order to remove Section 319(3)B of Canada's Criminal Code, protecting religious expression of faith from hate crime legislation. So the removal of statutes in our Constitution and the Criminal Code protecting religious speech is ongoing, and it's not restricted to one piece of paper or the Canadian Constitution or the Criminal Code. I would argue that Carney just wants Ottawa to have the final say over basic questions of rights and freedoms in Canada. He doesn't want to give it to the courts. He certainly doesn't want it to give it to the provincial premiers, and he's not all that terribly religious, so he will drop the protection for religious organizations. But for all it's worth, Carney also appealed the Emergencies Act 2 weeks back, so he might not want the courts to decide everything. Maybe he just wants to be in charge. The subtext no one wants to talk about is how all the new religious accommodations seemingly required by the overwhelming amount of recent new immigrants arriving in Canada is only just beginning. Quebec has always been more sensitive about this than any other part of the country. They want to preserve the Quebec language, but it's going to roll out in Ontario. It's going to roll out in BC. It's going to roll out all the way across the country. And if we lose all of our protections for free speech, there will only be the courts deciding if process, rules and regulations defined by the government, process has been followed. And I don't think that's a good idea. Anyway, Richard?
Yeah, no, absolutely. All this stuff that Carney's trying to do, or Carnage is trying to do, is disgusting. Totally disgusting.
He's trying to, he's trying to mostly change everything.
Yeah.
Courts no longer decide questions of facts, no longer decides questions of the criminal code or morality. The courts now decide whether the internal bureaucratic processes have been followed.
That's all they do. And of course, basically what he's trying to do is trying to be the supreme leader of the people of Canada.
Yeah. You and I talked about this before. He is following down the same path as the Hong Kong government after China started taking over, flooding the country with money, paying off people to change the legislation, and slowly over a period of 10 or 15 years, take away the freedoms enjoyed by the citizens of Hong Kong.
Yep. Yep. He's working hard to do that. And it's funny that there's so many people in Canada that do not see that. Mm-hmm. They're completely blind to it.
Well, mostly they're retired federal government bureaucrats. I have to share something with you. I wrote an article on where to get money on Manitoulin Island, where I live. Holy crap, 60% of everything comes from the federal or provincial governments. There's a whole raft of government grants. No wonder everybody here votes NDP. If they voted for the Conservatives or heaven forbid, for the PPC, the gravy train would stop and everybody would starve.
Yep. Of course. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I think it's just frightening, to be honest.
Of course.
I think we're all going to starve anyway because you inflate the money in order to pay these incredible amounts of cash you give away to the locals. And the money's not valuable 2, 3, 5 years down the line. So we all starve anyway.
That's right. Yeah, and that's what I keep telling people. The money has no value.
Any more about, I was going to say any more. You go. Sorry.
Its only value is the ability to use it for barter.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we're going to use different things for barter for a couple of years. We're going to use our manual labor. We're going to use our intellect. We're going to use our skill set at repairing things on the fly, and just maybe things will be better for a short period of doing that.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway, shall we go? Oh, you go.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to finish it off with absolutely.
Oh, no. Let's go on to our next piece. Evidently, this is the most important story in the legacy media for the last 3 or 4 days. And I don't know why. Now, it was outlined in the March 23rd, 2026 CBC News post under the title of U.S. officials say both black boxes recovered from fatal Air Canada runway crash. Now, the Air Canada flight from Montreal to New York's LaGuardia Airport crashed into a Port Authority fire truck on the runway. It wasn't even up in the air. And it did that late Sunday night, a day and a half ago. It killed both Canadian pilots and it injured dozens of passengers and crew. Now, the fire truck was responding to a separate incident when it crossed the active runway, and there was an accident. It probably could have prevented. It was certainly stupid. But for some reason, it was the most important news story on Canadian legacy news for several days. And this piece I brought up from CBC was updated today, and there's lots of more stories about it. Richard, should we be focusing on quite so much on stupid crap like this?
No, I mean, well, the main thing to remember about this is that down in the States, there's a partial um, restriction on the people
Well,
that
there's a
get paid.
partial shutdown
Yeah,
in order to keep from paying the ICE people who are trying to deport all the illegal immigrants. The Democrats have shut down most of government services, which means it's really hard
exactly.
to get air traffic controllers.
Exactly. And that's not really being brought out too much in all those mainstream media stories.
No, it
Um,
isn't. It's coming out that the pilots were stupid, on the ground and stupid.
yeah, yeah. So, and of course, the air traffic controller um, has already come out and admitted he was wrong.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't the pilot's fault. It wasn't the fire department's fault. It was
Mm-hmm.
just the fact that the guy who was giving the instructions didn't wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. Or was he overworked because not enough people to work the shifts in there?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? So it could be the Democrats were actually at fault for this by not getting the getting the shutdown stopped.
You're saying it's important to Canada only because it was an Air Canada flight,
Yeah,
but it wasn't that big big of a whoop for Canada. But it might have been an important story for the United States, where the government is still only partially functional months after the Democrats and Republicans couldn't get uh, an agreement. I don't even know what they're fighting for these days. I think there was. I think the Democrats wanted to fund Obamacare for another couple of years.
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, they didn't like the fact that that particular program was shut down.
Yeah, well, I don't blame it. It's like massively expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Any more comments?
Nope, not on that one.
It was a pretty easy story. Here is something a little more complex. This is an additional piece that I attached here. More relates to the Gulf War, the latest Gulf War, uh, and I find this take on it fairly interesting. Now, it's worth noting that, as outlined in the March 23rd Rest of World post, that's an international publication uh, created by ex legacy media journalists to track technology all around the world. That's why they call it Rest of World. The story is titled "The Gulf Was Silicon Valley's Bet on the Future. Trump has put it in the crosshairs." Uh, and the article notes that the US possesses AI server farms now over almost the entire world, uh, even in the Middle East. Now, it goes on to say that Iranian drones have attacked 3 Amazon Web Service data centers in the UAE and Bahrain. They did it on March 1st. That was like 23 days ago, and nobody really knew about it till now. But the story says that when Iranian drones struck 3 American Amazon Web Services data centers in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain on March 1st, this is the first confirmed military attack on a hyperscale cloud provider in history. And the article says that Tehran was not lashing out blindly. The article went on to say that Tehran was making a calculated statement about the 21st century's most valuable infrastructure. Now, even in Canada, Canada's AI assets are targets for Middle Eastern sabotage and westerns and weapons. I'm sorry, and at least one of Canada's AI assets uh, is in the crossfires. Now, as outlined on the April 23rd Global News Post, U.S. sanctions Vancouver company for alleged ties to Hezbollah. Uh, Even fundraising for Iran seems to be a legitimate target of war, at least to the Americans. This to me kind of makes it a world war. Richard, do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, the thing is, though, is that fundraising for Iran or whatever it was is the same as the fundraising for the truckers convoy.
Yeah.
So
No,
basically,
I agree with that. Yeah.
the government tries to shut it down by shutting down the bank accounts and things like that. But fortunately, the bank accounts are around the world. So they can shut down the ones in Canada, they can shut down the ones in the States, but they can't shut down the ones in other countries.
I would argue that they can't shut down the ones in the European Union right now.
Right.
I would argue that they can't shut down any in Russia or any in China or in the United Arab Emirates right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Of course, targeting the data centers was always something that I knew would happen.
Yeah.
It just had to.
The data centers are major targets for sabotage. I read a story 2 days ago. Evidently, there has been sabotage in Rogers and in its Fido subsidiary. And they said, I think they said 9 million lines of code had been stolen bodily from the Rogers and the Fido installation.
Right.
So I'm not sure where that's going to go, but somebody on the dark web has been offering, I think it's 300, or has been offering up the data for a price of $300,000 US.
That's
you
amazing.
Don't think it's worth that much?
No, really, the data is not that valuable as far as I'm concerned. The criminals love it.
The criminals love it. I'm told there was no card numbers, but there was a lot of what they call metadata.
Right.
Questions about who it went to, when it was sent, where you were standing when you sent it, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's not the metadata is interesting, but going through it, I mean, it takes a long time to process all that. Of course, they got the massive computers in the data centers now. It doesn't take that long, I guess. But still, that's to me, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of value in that. But maybe I'm not that great of a hacker.
Maybe. I always thought that the best thing to do is to combine one database with different databases using different data sets. If you can find commonalities and you can make the data fit together, suddenly you can do some pretty awesome things.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I agree with that because I did that when I was working at the university.
Oh wow.
We had to cross connect various databases and get profiles as to how the courses were doing and all that stuff.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if we're going to be in a giant panopticon, somebody's going to have to take great care to make sure that everybody doesn't know our every secret. I don't think that'll be helpful, and I think the government secrets will all come out too, and we'll all know what everybody else is doing, but we'll be really confused about it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, two more pieces tonight. Let's do two more quick pieces. This first one I find to be particularly stupid. Shall we go ahead?
Yep.
Okay, here is the stupidest story I've heard all this week. Canada's gyms are being used by white supremacists and neo-Nazis who are moving their recruitment and collaboration increasingly offline through a network of so-called active fitness clubs. Now, according to the March 17th Canada's National Observer post under the title of Canada's white supremacists target gyms to indoctrinate new followers. Now, this article claims that, well, the global decentralized fitness network promotes male camaraderie fitness, and martial arts as a gateway to white supremacist activism and violence. Now, the Post is mostly talking about a March 17th Institute for Strategic Dialogue post under the title Tribe and Train, examining Canada's new model of white supremacist mobilization. And that article argues that the fitness-oriented activities of these groups are not solely pursued as ends in themselves, but are instead means of achieving political objectives. Goes on to say that as one leader of Second Sons, evidently that's a fascist activist group in Canada, stated during a 2025 live stream that was applied to strategic dialogue from God knows where. Anyway, the guy said, the reason you tribe and train is not about the exercise. It's not about the boxing. The article goes on to say that the reason you engage in a tribe and train is to practice organizing. If you can organize 100 guys to go for a hike, then you can organize the same 100 guys to go to a conference, and you can organize the same 100 guys to go to a protest. And that's how we fucking win. I'm open. Strategic Dialogue got a government grant to do this. I can't believe they did such a shoddy report.
Well, Second Sons is also part of is Diagolon.
Diagolon is a bunch of guys who make fun of governments, I think.
Yeah, and of course, Second Sons is a part of them too. So they make fun of government. They're still making fun of government, making a mockery of it.
This is government funding, government making crap up so they get funded next year better.
Yep.
Don't know what else to say about that. Shall we move on?
Sure.
A lot of stuff tonight. I'm sorry about that. Last one is Bayer, a pharmaceutical giant, when it merged with Monsanto. Give us a build up for that one.
Yeah, I remember when that happened. We have a pharmaceutical company and a poison company.
They still fit together, don't they?
Yep. And one sprays the poisons on the fields, makes people sick, and the other creates drugs to make them feel better, but not cure them.
The other injects the poison into our arms.
Well, yeah, a poison, yeah.
Yeah. Here we go. March 21st, Mongo Minds on BitChute post when Bayer, a pharmaceutical giant, merged with Monsanto.
The largest merger ever done in Germany was Bayer-Monsanto, where Bayer, which is a pharmaceutical company, merged with Monsanto, which is an agrochemical company in the United States. If you look at what Bayer makes, they make cancer drugs for things like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And if you look at what Monsanto makes, which is Roundup, which is the most widely used pesticide in America, the cancer that it causes is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. They've paid out $11 billion in the past couple of years for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cases. So the companies are merging that are directly known to cause the disease with a medical company that has a treatment for the disease. Like, this is very, very dark.
Yeah.
I call it synergy.
Yeah. No, when I saw that, I thought, okay, well, people don't realize what happened there. So let's tell them. Let's put it out there for them.
I think it's important to realize that. I think we always knew that companies did not benefit from curing diseases. But this is the first example I've come across of a company benefiting by creating a disease.
Or creating sicknesses, yeah.
Yeah, benefiting directly from a disease.
Exactly, that they create.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know how else to say that, but I think there's a sea change coming. So many people, whether they're on the left or the right hand side of the spectrum, they know the system's corrupt. They blame the exact opposite people, but they know the system's corrupt. This is a good time to start developing solutions.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So
anyway, we're coming to the end of tonight. What is on your plate for the next couple of days?
Tomorrow is my day off, and Thursday I've got a story for Thursday already lined up. Then I got to do up all the stories for Friday, so I'll be doing those up tomorrow. While after I'm done with the other story, tomorrow's story or Thursday's story. Possibly I might be able to get them pulled out tomorrow night, but we'll see. It's just a matter of finding 8 stories for Friday.
Holy crap, that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, 8 shows. I do have them sort of queued up. I just have to grab them and download them and put them onto my server so I can edit them.
Well, then you should enjoy the rain. It'll give you an excuse to stay indoors and do your work.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be nice out tomorrow. Today was just a day of rain. That's all.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to find the silver lining in the cloud.
Well, it's okay. I mean, I want the rain because we didn't get much snow this year.
Yeah.
And we don't want to have the problem with forest fires. So got to try and get some more rain into the ground.
That's a good idea. I just saw Rocky.
Oh, did you?
He came out behind you and he plopped down to the floor.
Oh. There you are. Let's put you on air. There you go.
There he is. He looks very cute. He looks like he's making. He looks like he's using email.
Yeah, well, he's. I think he wanted to go and do some food or some water or something. So
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Your stories come out 7 a.m. Pacific time.
7:30 a.m. Pacific time.
My apologies. I've been saying that for 2 years. You'd think I'd remember it by now.
Yep.
It comes out on the channels listed underneath my chin. Some are scrolling, some are stationary. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, and of course, the ones on Facebook, you got to realize that Facebook has decided that I'm not worthy of doing live streams. So what I've done instead is I do my live streams on Twitch, and I'll put the link to that live stream on Facebook. So you can always still watch the news.
No doubt Facebook feels you've been spreading too many malicious truths.
Well, yeah, that's probably quite true. As far in their mind's eye, yeah.
As for the Freedom Forum, we normally record every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. right now on a variety of internet platforms, including the one you are watching. We republish the show the next day with notes on our Substack page so you can validate everything we say, disagree with everything we say, or just get some thought of our thought processes. Anyway, it's on chuckblack.substack.com sometime tomorrow. And most of our stories slide behind a paywall after a month online. So if you'd like to maintain access, the easiest thing to do is to sign up for a monthly subscription. Same price as every show, $20 per month, $160 per year. It entitles you to access archive posts, anything over a month old. Plus includes a lot of in-depth stories not covered in our regular stuff. We also provide a Substack app to help you access Freedom Forum stories, which we recommend. Substack is, StreamYards is pretty good, but only if you sign up using either Richard's or my link. We get a little bonus out of this at the end of each month to help defray some of our costs. Now, tonight's show will be up on Substack tomorrow, and we'll be back next Sunday at 5:30 p.m. for another edition of Roasting the Press, and next Tuesday at 8 p.m. for another edition of Last Week Today. I have a sore throat. Richard, did I miss anything?
No, you got all the words in.
In that case, good night. I will see you in a couple of days. Enjoy your drive tomorrow.
Okay.